Here are the top stories for today, March 4, 2022. The country's inflation, or the rate of increase in prices of goods and services, stays at 3% in February. The central bank is keeping a close watch on global developments and its effects on the local economy and consumer prices. Repatriation of Filipinos from war-torn Ukraine remains in full swing. Some 25 Filipinos evacuated from Ukraine to Moldova are set to return to the country. Vaccination cards are not required in entering malls in Alert Level 1 areas, but the Interior Department sees nothing wrong with some establishments still requiring it from patrons amid eased COVID-19 curves. And no hitting of the brakes in Build. The Binondo-Intramuros bridge is set to open in April and is expected to ease traffic congestion on both sides of the Pasig River. Good day, I'm Marita Muaje. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The country's inflation stayed at 3% in February 2022, the same as that in January, based on the latest data from the Philippine Statistics Authority. National statistician Dennis Mapa said the latest inflation rate falls within the 2.8 to 3.6% range pegged by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Mapa said housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels mainly drove the movement of prices last month, which saw consecutive fuel price hikes. He said the impact of the fuel price hikes is being seen in subgroups such as transport and housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels. However, it has yet to affect other subgroups such as food. Meanwhile, Metro Manila registered a higher inflation rate at 1.9% from 1.3% in January. Central Visayas posted faster inflation rates at 5.1%, while BARMM experienced slower inflation at 1.6%.
Ang mga pangunahing nag-ambag sa inflation ng transport ay ang mga sumusunod. Gasoline na may 32.1% inflation, diesel na may 46.4% inflation, at other passenger transport by road tulad ng tricycle na may 1.4% inflation.
Monetary authorities are closely monitoring a development overseas such as upticks in oil prices, its impact on domestic inflation, and other effects. This came after the Philippine Statistics Authority reported that inflation rate last February is flat at 3%. Prices of oil in the international market further rose recently, which Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Diokno traced to the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Under these circumstances, Diokno said the BSP will continue to closely monitor the emerging risks to the outlook for inflation. The government has allocated a budget for subsidies to sectors affected by the oil price upticks, such as public utility vehicle drivers and operators and farmers. Diokno said the central bank supports the non-monetary measures by the national government to help mitigate the impacts of higher oil prices and avoid the broadening of price pressures. 25 Filipinos have been extracted from war-torn Ukraine to Moldova and are now waiting to be repatriated home. The Department of Foreign Affairs said the 25 left Moldova for Bucharest, Romania with the help of the Philippine Embassy in Hungary and Honorary Consul in Chisinau, Victor Gaina. 21 of them are crew members of bulk carrier MV-S Breeze that had been on dry dock in the port of Odessa since January 27. The group is expected to depart Bucharest on Sunday for Dubai, where they will fly to Manila via a Philippine Airlines flight. Philippine Ambassador to Hungary, Frank Simafranca, said around 200 Filipino seafarers are still stranded in various port cities in Ukraine. A total of 19 Filipinos have been repatriated from Ukraine since the Russians invaded. 4 more Filipinos are waiting for a repatriation flight in Romania, 15 in Hungary, and 9 in Austria. Meanwhile, 19 were recently evacuated from Lviv, Ukraine to Poland. Catholics in San Jose de Buenavista, Antique have joined the world in a prayer for peace in Ukraine during the Ash Wednesday Mass. St. Anthony's College chaplain Father Miguel Parulan said they held a special petition for peace in Ukraine. This as Antique Bishop Marvin Maceda relayed the appeal of Pope Francis to make Ash Wednesday a day of fasting and prayer. The celebration of Ash Wednesday was a reminder that people will return to Ash, for which they must remain humble and kind to others. Parulan said for this year's Ash Wednesday, ashes were sprinkled on the crown of the head of the pious people who attended the Mass instead of marking the forehead as a precautionary measure against COVID-19. Antique is under alert level 2. Vaccination cards are no longer required when entering malls in alert level 1 areas. Interior Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya made the clarification that some malls are still requiring people to present their vaccination cards before they are allowed entry. In a press briefing, Malaya said vaccination cards are only required in establishments considered as 3Cs or closed, crowded, close contact areas. These include indoor personal care establishments, fitness studios, spaces for meetings, conventions and events, hotels, and indoor dine-in establishments. While he sees nothing wrong with the vaccination card requirement for entry, Malaya advised that mall management should waive it to avoid confusion. He also assures that the DILG will discuss the matter with the local government units. Hong Kong has joined the Philippine government in reminding employers that terminating an employee who got infected with COVID-19 is a violation of their labor laws. Labor Attaché Melchor Dizon of the Philippine Overseas Labor Office said so far there are only 3 cases of termination involving Filipino workers. But in these cases, the employers were convinced to reconsider their decisions. He also said Hong Kong is closed to travelers from the Philippines, Canada, the US, the United Kingdom, Nepal, Pakistan, Australia, and France. The suspension of incoming flights from these countries has been extended until April 20. Meantime, the government continues to provide food banks and other financial assistance to affected OFWs. Over 220,000 OFWs are working and living in the host territory, 90% of whom are household service workers. 221 were afflicted by the virus. Still to come, the military foils a terror plot by the Dawla Islamiyah and pay your taxes. The BAR seeks taxpayer support for the country's post-pandemic recovery. Details ahead, keep it here on the PNA Newsroom.
The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly changed our lives for the worse. Lives and jobs were lost and economies reached a meltdown. Thanks to the arrival of safe and effective vaccines, we are one step closer to normalcy. It's time to do our part, get vaccinated for our safety and for our recovery.
You are there in that community, go there and have yourself vaccinated by any of the vaccines available. They are all potent, they are all effective.
I would like to appeal to all our kababayans, please get vaccinated against COVID-19 and be the government partner in preventing further spread of the disease. I encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as possible time. These vaccines are safe and they are the key to reopening our society. The need for international solidarity and cooperation cannot be made clearer than this pandemic, because everyone is safe. No one is safe globally until everybody is safe.
Vaccines work.
Interventions from the government are being felt in a barangay in North Cotabato that is being transformed into a peace and development zone. Ramonito Roble, chair of Barangay Nabundasan, reported that several projects were discussed with the provincial government in the past 2 days, while a few ongoing ones were implemented. Among these is a 1.5 million peso water system project and the free civil registration of the Philippine Statistics Authority. The projects are part of the developmental and socio-economic interventions being undertaken in the formerly declared peace zone, which intends to shield the residents from atrocities caused by the Communist New People's Army since the 1980s. The 3 other areas included in the transformation to peace and development zones are the village of Bituan, Sitio Miatub in Tuburan, and New Alimudian in Banayal. Military and police forces have foiled separate possible terror plots in Lanao del Sur and Agusan del Sur this week. Here's our report.
Military officials on Thursday said a possible terror plot has been averted with the fall of a Dawla Islamiyah multi-group lair in Barangay Ilalag, Maging, Lanao del Sur. The lair of the DIMG, led by Faharuddin Haji Satar alias Abu Zakaria, fell into the hands of the government troops following hours of firefight Tuesday. Abu Zakaria is the new emir of ISIS in Southeast Asia. Lieutenant General Alfredo Rosario Jr., Western Mindanao Command Chief, said the troops recovered improvised explosive devices and anti-personnel mines, as well as assorted firearms, illegal drugs, and propaganda materials. Zakaria is suspected of planning to create havoc during the observance of Ramadan and upcoming national and local elections. Meanwhile, military and police units have averted a bombing plot in Trento, Agusan del Sur town. Police Regional Office Caraga Director Brigadier General Romeo Karamat Jr. said 3 improvised explosive devices were planted Wednesday along the National Irrigation Administration Road in Sitios Igang and Quarry, Barangay Basa. He said concerned citizens discovered the IEDs and immediately reported the matter to authorities. Authorities are still investigating who is behind the foiled bombing. Meanwhile, police in Eastern Visayas have arrested 61 most wanted persons, 698 other offenders, and facilitated the surrender of 7 members of the New People's Army during its week-long operations. PNP Eastern Visayas Regional Director Brigadier General Bernard Banak said the 7-day region-wide simultaneous law enforcement operations from February 22 to 28 were successfully carried out in 6 provinces. The police regional chief lauded his men for maintaining the region's significant accomplishment in fighting lawlessness and criminality. He is confident that programs of the National Task Force on ending local communist armed conflict will convince more members of the communist terrorist group to yield. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Mundo.
The Chinese embassy announced that the construction of the China-funded Binondo-Intramuros bridge is almost complete and will be opened by April 2022. Chinese Ambassador Wang Xilian said the bridge would significantly ease traffic congestion at the Pasig River with its capacity to accommodate 30,000 vehicles daily. Apart from the bridge, a Philippine-China Friendship Park is expected to rise in the area through the donations from the Filipino-Chinese business community. Meanwhile, Wang said commercial procedures have been completed for the North and South Harbor Bridge, the East Bank-West Bank Bridge, and the Palanca-Villegas Bridge projects in Manila. He said there are still a host of government-to-government projects in progress totaling billions of dollars, such as the China-funded Kaliwa Dam project and the Samal Island to Davao City Connector project. Moving on to business, a post-pandemic recovery is expected to be doable with the support of the nation's taxpayers and the sustained strong performance of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. During the kickoff of the BIR's tax campaign, Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III underscored the critical role played by taxpayers in helping ensure the country's economic recovery. Dominguez said the new generation of entrepreneurs and businesses in the new economy should be reminded of their duty to pay their taxes correctly and on time. He said improvement of revenue collections is needed to meet the government's spending requirements. He noted that the game-changing reform started by the Duterte administration helped transform the Philippines into one of the fastest-growing economies in Asia before the pandemic. Dominguez encouraged all taxpayers to make use of electronic channels to file and pay their taxes this year. Meanwhile, the BIR should continue making progress in its digital transformation programs. The Japanese government is funding 4 projects worth 19.9 million pesos to acquire ambulances and medical equipment in 3 local government units as well as delivery trucks to help local farmers in 3 other provinces. The grants would help procure 2 ambulances for Parañaque City, rebuild the 66-year-old Grace Park Health Center in Caloocan City, acquire medical equipment for the Rural Health Unit of Palo Leyte, and provide 3 refrigerated trucks for small farmers in Laguna, Rizal, and Antique. The funding is part of Japan's grant assistance for grassroots human security projects in the Philippines. It was first launched in 1989 to help countries reduce poverty. During the signing of 4 grant contracts held in Makati, Japanese Ambassador Kazuhiko Koshikawa said these projects will be implemented in direct consultation with the local government and non-government organizations. More stories from the newsroom. Another disease is claiming the lives of more Filipinos during this pandemic. And tourism recovery is very much alive with the influx of more travelers. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom. The government has inaugurated more housing units and other infrastructure to help the residents of war-torn Marawi City return to their normal lives. Claire Gige has the story.
True to its commitment to rebuild Marawi City, Task Force Bangon Marawi or TFBM alongside the city government of Marawi and other line agencies inaugurated more completed infrastructures and turned over additional permanent housing units to rightful beneficiaries. During the recent visit of TFBM Chairperson Secretary Eduardo Del Rosario, the government inaugurated one of 10 4-story school buildings of the Marawi Integrated School in Barangay Mungkado, Kadingilan. 2 barangay complexes were also opened in Barangays Wawalayan, Marinawat, and Kampantaran. The Traffic Management Center, which is seen to ease the traffic congestion in the city, was launched as well, and one house of worship, the Macaurao Mosque, was likewise inaugurated. Meanwhile, some 250 permanent shelters constructed by the National Housing Authority and UN Habitat were given to IDPs. With this completion for the month of March, the TFBM conveyed they are optimistic to finish the rehabilitation process of the city.
I'm very satisfied with the progress of the rehabilitation. As I have been saying, we are on track, and by June 30, we will be 95%.
The city government, on the other hand, stressed that it is doing its part to fast-track other ongoing projects.
Nakikipag-ugnayan tayo sa lahat ng mga implementing agencies. Nakikipag-ugnayan tayo para nang sa ganon, mas matulungan natin sila mapabilis yung pagpapagawa ng mga nasabing infrastruktura.
For PNA Newsroom, Claire Gigha of the Philippine Information Agency, Lanao del Sur.
Coronary heart disease remains the leading cause of death among Filipinos. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority reveals that more than 17.9% of deaths are due to heart ailment. Coronary heart disease is a massive systematic inflammation of the vascular system which obstructs the nerves. According to PSA, deaths caused by coronary heart disease went up by 28% from January to October last year as compared to the same period in 2020. Philippine Heart Association President Dr. Gilbert Villela attributed the said increase to the pandemic as anxiety and mental stress create behaviors that are unfriendly to cardiovascular health. To address anxiety and mental stress caused by the pandemic, Villela urged the public to observe their loved ones who may be exhibiting changes in their behavior and have them checked by health experts. In sports, the Philippine Olympic Committee protested the Philippine Athletics Track and Field Association's refusal to endorse pole vaulter E.J. Obiena in 4 major international competitions. POC President Bumble Tolentino said despite being the best in Asia, Obiena will be denied the chance to win medals for the country. Obiena, the Asian record holder in men's pole vault, sought Patafa's endorsement for the World Indoor Championships in Belgrade on March 18 to 20. 31st Southeast Asian Games in Hanoi this May, World Championship in Eugene, Oregon on July, and the 19th Asian Games in Hangzhou on September. The Patafa denied Obiena's request, citing the non-completion of mediation procedures. Obiena's rift with the Patafa revolves around liquidation issues involving his coach Vitaly Petrov's salaries. He later accused his association of harassment. The issue has reached the Court of Arbitration for Sports after Association President Philip Ella Huico filed a complaint against the Tokyo Olympian and the POC last February 11. Over 211,000 international arrivals were recorded since the country opened its borders for fully vaccinated foreigners last month. The Bureau of Immigration said this is also more than 130% higher than the 91,000 passenger arrivals in February of 2021. About 154,000 of them were returning Filipinos. Tourist arrivals also recorded in January with over 150,000 compared to the previous year with only 95,000. Commissioner Jaime Morente expressed hope that the travel industry will now gradually recover from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over 6,000 indigent couples got married and have made their union legal with the help of the Quezon City government's Kasalang Bayan program in February. Among those who availed of the program have already been living together for as long as 4 decades. The application for the marriage license, the registration of marriage certificate, and processing fees were free for those who were wed through the program. The newly married couples were also feted with the traditional cake cutting and wine tasting to make the occasion more memorable. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte said Kasalang Bayan aims to provide support to indigent couples who are unable to afford a wedding ceremony. She said legalizing a marriage will benefit the couple's children the most because they get to enjoy the rights given to legitimate children by the law. Belmonte served as the marriage officiant in the city's Kasalang Bayan, with other city officials serving as witnesses. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. The country's inflation, or the rate of increase in prices of goods and services, stays at 3% in February. The central bank is keeping a close watch on global developments and its effects on the local economy and consumer prices. Repatriation of Filipinos from war-torn Ukraine remains in full swing. Some 25 Filipinos evacuated from Ukraine to Moldova are set to return to the country. Vaccination cards are not required in entering malls in Alert Level 1 areas, but the Interior Department sees nothing wrong with some establishments still requiring it from patrons amid eased COVID-19 curbs. And no hitting of the brakes in Build. The Binondo-Intramuros bridge is set to open in April and is expected to ease traffic congestion on both sides of the Pasig River. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19.
So remember, wear face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19.
Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. We tell stories that inspire change. I'm Marita Muaje. Stay safe and have a good day.